This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 3rd of June 2021, and I am 2J.
I'm Tuam.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, BBI court date jolts referendum plans. In the Standard, Battle Royale starts. And in the Star, inside the UHURU Raila legal battle to salvage BBI. Well, 2J, why don't you kick us off?
So here at the Fifth Estate, we promise that we respect the authority of the courts,
Yes.
despite what others may say. There is a case before the Court of Appeal that we would not dare influence, but this does not stop us from engaging in some light speculation. And in order to do so, we will be guided by two things. One is the Rumfeld submission, and two is the scope of the law. In regards to the law, it is important that we toe the line. The legal reason for this is a doctrine called sub judice. It is Latin for under a judge, and it means that there is a pending matter before a court that should not be discussed in public for fear of influencing the process. As for the Rumfeld submission, it is a Fort Hall School of Government tool of analysis. It is inspired by the former Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, who served under George W. Bush. And he said the following: as we know, there are known knowns.
Correct.
Things we know that we know. We also know that there are known unknowns.
Yes.
That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know.
Yes.
But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't even know that we don't know.
Yes.
And so I will use this submission, not to influence or make predictions, but simply to outline the lay of the land with the current information that we have. And so we begin with the known knowns, the things we know that we know. We know that there is a case in court to determine the legality of the BBI process. We also know that the courts have adopted a hard line approach towards the actions of the executive. Lastly, we also know how long this process should take.
Yes.
But when we move into the known unknowns, the things we know that we do not know, it gets a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
And the most critical of all falls after the court's decision.
Yes.
We do not know how the court will decide and how that may impact the referendum timelines. Will a July referendum even still be viable? And importantly, we do not know if the court process will even be important for the BBI agenda. By this we mean, is this a game of primary thrust? We already know that the constitutional amendments can take place in Parliament. So is the referendum process a decoy? Who knows? And finally, I will examine or attempt to examine the unknown unknowns, the things we know that we do not know.
Yes.
These are also known as black swan events because they are unpredictable and beyond what is normally expected of a situation. And this has potentially severe consequences.
Yes.
Here, all bets are off and the true nature of the judiciary will reveal itself. The 2017 election nullification was an example of a black swan. And so I ask, is the judiciary prepared to do even worse?
You know what? I want to tackle this question of the judiciary. And today I would like to speak about the alarming scope creep by our judiciary. Now, according to the political scientist Theodore Becker, every judicial body the world over arrives at its decision through one of three approaches. The first is the legal approach, and that is where the judges adhere strictly to the law and the sovereign and supreme voice of the people. The second is the attitudinal approach, where the judges decide cases based on their individual policy and political preferences.
Yes.
And the third is the strategic model.
Yes.
And here, in judging a case, judges decide for or against a case depending on how their fellow judges determine their cases. It's a case of peer pressure.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the models.
Yes.
So in light of that framework, where do we place Kenya's judiciary? Our judges fall squarely in the domain of the attitudinal model, meaning that the judiciary is going beyond its mandate of adjudication and is now performing the functions of parliament.
Yes.
So let me explain.
Yes.
Courtesy of our judges, our political system is becoming increasingly judicialized, our political system.
Yes.
And that is to say, legislation that has duly been formulated and enacted by Parliament is increasingly being rewritten or nullified by the judiciary.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Kenyan judicature has for a long time now been operating as a legislative chamber. And at this rate, in a few years, under our young constitutional dispensation, the Kenyan courts may actually begin providing draft statutory language to Parliament,
Yes.
which they deem to be constitutional.
Absolutely.
And that is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It's dangerous because the judiciary, as John Locke told us, must always be seen as a neutral arbiter between conflicting parties. And if it ceases to be perceived as a neutral arbiter, the people lose confidence in it.
Yeah.
And if the people lose confidence in it, it only erodes its power. Right now, and for the last 8 years, the judiciary has shown nothing but legislative appetite.
I like that.
Legislative appetite.
Yes.
They have shown their naked ambition in usurping the power of Parliament.
Yeah.
They want to become the body that supposedly represents the sovereign and supreme will of the people. Unbeknownst to them, however, they are self-cannibalizing. They are bastardizing the institution of the judiciary. This crop of judges, people like Justice Mativo,
Yes.
I don't know who else
And,
was in that.
and that Ngoge fellow.
Yeah. Oh, what Wote.
Yeah.
You know, they behave like teenagers whose hormones are pumping like a disco, to quote Professor Mutahi Ngunyi. They behave as though there is no tomorrow for the institution of the judiciary.
Yes.
They fail to understand that judicial independence is the granting of opportunities accompanied by the burden of choice, to
Yeah.
paraphrase the words of President Uhuru Kenyatta during our 50th Madaraka Day. You know, we don't really care about Justice Mativo, Justice this other one, that other one.
Yeah.
You know, they will come and go. But what will their legacy and their contribution have been to the judiciary? Will it have been to build it up or to tear it down? And what they're doing right now, without knowing it, is to tear down the credibility of the judiciary. So in sum, they continue to perpetuate chaos in our political system, and they have refused to temper their ambitions, their political ambition. And you know what they say about those who cannot be tamed? They say that if a beast cannot be tamed, it must be unleashed to self-destruct.
Beautiful.
They're doing it all by themselves. Yeah.
And there's one thing they forgot, that the Constitution, the custodian of the Constitution is the military. And once
Of
they
course.
continue showing, and they
Yes.
continue showing legislative
Their recklessness.
appetite, then they will be doing a civilian coup. Anyway, I won't discuss much. I won't go further than the military. What I will do is, lately, I've been asking myself, what would happen if we replace government ministries with Jeshi? What would be wrong if we channel CDF and county allocation funds to the military? What would be wrong if roads, ports, rail were handled by the military? And I ask this because the economic transformation of Kenya is being driven by the military. From railways to ports to hospitals, Jeshi has taken over. They have had a bigger impact than CDF, county revenue allocations, and even national government budgets all put together. And here's why. When President Kenyatta asked government technocrats how much reviving the port of Kisumu and UHURU would cost, they gave him a bill of 3 billion shillings. Jeshi did everything at a cost of 300 million shillings. When KMC was under the Ministry of Agriculture, they were slaughtering 7 cows a day and owed farmers 250 million shillings. When the military took over in September last year, in just 2 months, KMC had paid off 250 million shilling debt. In fact, they not only paid off the debt, they increased the slaughter production from 7 cows a day to 200 cows a day. And now they're paying people in just 72 hours. Right here in Nairobi, Jeshi has built 23 level 3 and level 2 hospitals at a cost of 2 billion shillings. If you were to see the quotation from the Ministry of Health contractors, a level 3 hospital is quoted at $500 million shillings. Jeshi has done 23 hospitals at a cost of about 86 million shillings. One. Now, lastly, when President Kenyatta visited Nairobi County Lorry Yard last year, he found disused lorries. When he asked how much it would cost to bring back the lorries into life, the county government said the lorries were as good as scrap. And the only way out was to purchase new lorries at a cost of 22 million shillings each. When UHURU asked Jeshi to intervene, they refurbished all 76 trucks at a total cost of 22 million shillings. And all those trucks are back on the roads. Ladies and gentlemen, what's our point here? If Jeshi can do what public institutions are supposed to do, adjust 10% of the cost, why do we need ministries? If the port of Kisumu can be revived with only 300 million shillings, how can an MP in Kiharu stand proud and say he used the same 300 million shillings to build classrooms? How can we allocate the same amount of money to build dispensaries and also to build dispensaries and equate it to building ports? Are we being serious here? I'm convinced that the only way out of our national mediocrity is the military. Democracy will keep Kenya poor.
Absolutely. And you know, it reminds me of a quote by Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern-day Turkey.
Yes.
And he said, for the people, despite the people.
Despite the people,
And that's the Uhuru Kenyatta methodology. That is his logic. And you know what? We will thank him later for it as the citizens of this country. Now, we've got a 3-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines: topical, speculative, repetitive, groundbreaking, thoughtful, or just plain lazy. I don't think any of these headlines are worth awarding.
However, you had a suggestion for the Standard, didn't you? The Battle Royale starts.
No. What I said is the Standard could have been rewritten to Battle Royale begins.
Yes.
But you know what? Maybe actually, as it is,
no, I think we rewrite it and award ourselves the winning headline.
Okay, fantastic. That's a brilliant idea. Brilliant idea.
The rest.
So on that note, I'll toss a star and I'll toss the Daily Nation. And on to the political pieces we call cartoons in this country: humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, effective or just plain lazy. 2J. Tell us.
We're going to start with the Standard. And in the Standard, we have 2 caricatures, one of Vladimir Putin and one of the Belarus president, Alexander Lukashenko. And they're having a nice little dinner.
Yes.
And Lukashenko is a blushing bride with a pearl necklace and a beautiful dress.
It's kind of funny.
And Putin is reading the menu, and it says, Belarusian bloggers and journalist soup for starters, fried Russian opposition stroganoff for entree, and civil society chocolate salami for dessert. And the waiter, we assume, was holding 2 wine bottles, one called EU Sanctions, the other called US Sanctions since 1945. And the waiter says, and you can wash all of that down with our oldest collections of wine. So the context here is Belarus and Russia are allies.
Yes.
And I think it was 2 weeks ago on a Sunday that a Ryanair flight that was departing from Latvia?
Yeah, Latvia to Lithuania.
Yeah, Latvia to Lithuania, something of that nature, was asked to ground the plane immediately due to a bomb threat.
Yes.
And the outcome of all of this was that there was no bomb threat.
Yes.
In fact, there was just a journalist on the plane who was of interest to Lukashenko. And so it was all a ruse to get the guy arrested. And then recently, Putin and Lukashenko were on a yacht, presumably why they've dressed him up as a beautiful blushing lady. And I think they just had drinks and talked about economic cooperation and the pandemic.
What a devious plan to make a plane land.
I know, right? Can you imagine?
That was brilliant.
Yeah, the story goes that as the pilot alerted the passengers to the bomb threat and the emergency landing, the journalist turned to the person next to him and said, this is all because of me, like they've come for me. So he knew. Yeah, decent cartoon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, quite a humorous and satirical cartoon there.
Absolutely.
Shall we move on to that of the other cartoon here, to
Absolutely.
What do we have?
In the Star.
In the Star. What do we have in the Star? In the Star, you have a caricature of President Uhuru Kenyatta seated at the desk of the executive, and right next to him, It's a dog, and the dog is the judiciary. And the dog has eaten elections 2017 and has eaten the BBI. You know, I think that they're talking about Moraga and what the 5-judge panel did. And that there's
what's UHURU saying?
And then the UHURU now is also, now there's another cartoon of him sleeping and he's dreaming of the judiciary. It's a nightmare. And it's barking and he seems defiant. And the UHURU is saying, you haven't been a good buddy, you doggy.
Yeah.
I think it's a great cartoon. I mean, by the time the judiciary is being caricatured as a dog.
As a dog, yeah.
Wow.
Like a rabid,
a
rabid dog, right?
Yeah.
And I also think this is a new cartoonist. We've never seen him before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell us who you are.
Fairly,
good cartoon.
Good contender there.
You can park it.
Let's put that in Parking Bay. In the Daily Nation, we have a caricature of President Uhuru Kenyatta boxing, and he's trying to fight the court ruling. However, instead of fighting the court, he is, this person represented as a court, who's a judge. He's boxing the shadow of this person. And he's taking his gloves off, and that's just to indicate that, he's not actually yet hitting at the judiciary, but hitting at the shadow.
And I think this is, okay, it's a rubbish cartoon, and I think it misses the point in the same way that the headlines missed the point yesterday. A lot of the headlines were talking about how the president put the judiciary on the cross, how he's revisiting. I don't think the president is doing any of those things. He's not hitting at the judiciary. He's trying to alert us to the fact that we have a rogue judiciary. And I think alerting us to that and attacking them are two different things. And even if he is attacking them, because they are rogue and failing to understand what their role is as a third arm of government, he ought to do it, right?
It's a right of reply.
Exactly.
And then he's here. And maybe that's why the Star should win this. Should win with the winning cartoon. I mean, the judiciary being depicted as a dog, as actually a pet, that has torn BBI and the election 2017, the 2017 elections. It shows it doesn't know what it's doing.
And what do you do with a bad dog?
You
beat it.
Give it a hot dog.
All right, so on that note, I think I'll toss the Daily Nation.
Okay.
I will toss the Standard.
Absolutely. Then we have a winning cartoon then from the Star.
Yes.
And so let me finish this episode with a quote from our president during the Madaraka Day address. And he said, "Our Constitution is not a yoke around our necks. Rather, it is a mighty sword that can break the chains that limit us." How beautiful. How
brilliant
beautiful.
quote, yeah.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on your TV screens. Find us on Pan Free to Air, Go TV, and Star Times. Have a good evening. God bless.